Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Eric Darnley Small. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I appreciate your continuing to come back and see what I have going on here. As you guys may already know, you can like and subscribe. Please do, and click that bell to be notified of new content. I'm going to go through some videos here. I'm going to go through some stories here that I found to discuss, and I want to use that material as backup for my case that I'm about to make. And you can find all links on our Mastodon, mastodon.vtip.me/at what you missed. So if you want to see these links, I always encourage people to go to the Mastodon, go to take a look at these links, and look at what I'm looking at and judge for yourself and make some informed discussions between yourselves, and contact the show. Contact me directly on the Mastodon and let me know what you think. I'm also going to put, I'll, in the comments below, let me know if that Mastodon is working for you, and if you would like me to put some links directly in the page. I'm not going to put them all in there, but those that are really important that folks want to check out, let me know, and I'll update the page and put the links, or put it in the comments as you guys desire. So, tough week. Very tough week. And this show is not, as I've said before, about the breaking news so much so about what everybody else is talking about, right? My goal is to talk about the things that you missed or may have missed. But I talked about on my last show Joe Biden and the debate and the upcoming election, which is something I don't want to talk about the horse race so much as all of the other important things that are going on. But this debate happened, and I did a video, and I think I may have changed my mind a little bit. There's been a lot of nuance, there's been a lot talked about and a lot discussed. But the purpose of this video is to give an argument on my changing views on the Joe Biden candidacy for 2026. I should say 2024. I don't know why I have 2026 there. That's a typo. But a lot has changed in 9 days. And, listen, people have a right to change their minds. People have a right to make adjustments. I think it's important. Some people are double downers and work very hard to sort of remain stuck in their point of view and their thinking about things. I think that we are so way ahead of the game in terms of the election and where it is. You know, you have countries like in England that just had its biggest election, where they do the whole thing and everything is done in a couple of months. Donald Trump has been running for president since 2 years ago or so, when he first got wind that he was indicted. So you have a right to change your mind, and I have a right to change my mind. One of the things that is important that I think fundamentally is that if we stop with this idea that we're looking for the best person for the job, and we lean into this fear thing, we become, and I consider myself a Democrat, I consider myself a progressive. I'm not extremely progressive on everything. I have, I'm balanced in that area, but I'm for the most part progressive. And if we stop questioning government, if we stop looking for the best person for the job, if we stop talking about things that are important, like how government functions, and instead go into this fear base, we have to vote based on fear, based on anxiety, based on how bad the other guy is, we become conservatives. Because I believe one of the things that has completely corrupted the Republican Party and the conservative movement specifically is that they no longer believe policy. They no longer have an argument for how this country should run. They no longer believe in facts. All they have is fear. Fear of the Democratic Party, fear of progressivism. That's what animates them. That's what motivates them. Fear of crime, fear of big government, fear that someone's going to come and take your guns. Fear, 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 fear. That is who Republicans are. That is who the conservative movement is, and that is why Donald Trump came in and his minions, the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, All of these crazy Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, rich people, all of these folks who are out there and are, the Mercers, who are out there and who are guiding this country to autocracy, have done it through fear. Fox News, and all of these things, Breitbart, when it existed, Steve Bannon. They've used fear completely to control the Republican Party, and now they're trying to do it to Democrats. By the way, a lot of the stuff, fear mongering over Donald Trump, that Steve Bannon, Project 2025, and all of these, I believe that it is about fear and getting people frightened, so that we will make rash decisions and do crazy things. All that being said, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about my changing views on Joe Biden's candidacy. And this is sort of a back end to my previous video on this. And I feel like I have to come clean and let people know when I have changed my mind on these things, because it's important. So on today's show, I want to talk about Joe Biden's loss of support from donors. Calls to step down by political supporters, insiders are increasing. Confusing and changing reasons for his poor performance on the debate stage last week, Thursday. Polling has moved away from Biden. I think it's important to talk about that. ABC News one-on-one. Is it too late? I was someone who said right after the debate, I was talking to people and I was saying he needs to come out and do multiple one-on-ones to let people know that he is of sound mind. He has done one, and that was yesterday as of this recording. Then the question becomes, if he does step down, who will replace him and what kind of a crap show that could become? And then finally, what my thoughts are on this. So I'm going to jump right in and start on this. And I don't want to, I always try to make this video short, guys, but you know how I ramble. So anyway, so number one, are the donors with Biden? A handful of big name donors, mostly from the entertainment business, are now calling for the president to drop out of the race in 2024. Just the other day, Abigail Disney, who is, I think if people know her at all or are familiar, she is somebody who has always been vocal as her support for Democrats over the years. She is, of course, billionaire heir to the Disney fortune, and she has laid her lot with the Democratic Party, but she is not happy with what she's seeing. And this is out of the Hollywood Reporter. She says Abigail Disney said Thursday that she intends to halt her donations to the Democratic Party until President Biden steps down from the presidential election. I intend to stop any contributions to the party unless and until they replace Biden at the top of the ticket. Disney, the granddaughter of Roy O. Disney, told CNBC. This is realism, not disrespect. Biden is a good man. He has served his country admirably, but the stakes are far too high, she continued. If Biden does not step down, the Democrats will lose. Of that, I am absolutely certain. The consequences for the loss will be genuinely dire. Next up is Reed Hastings of Netflix. Reed Hastings, the Netflix co-founder, who in recent years has become one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party, called on Wednesday for President Biden to relinquish his place atop the Democratic presidential ticket. Biden needs to step aside to allow a vigorous Democratic leader to beat Trump and keep us safe and prosperous, he said in an email with the Times. Next up is Ari Emanuel. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Appearing before a packed house at the Aspen Ideas Festival in Colorado, the Endeavor CEO had been invited to talk with the festival's acting curator, Tina Brown. She began after Emanuel took his seat. Regarding Democrats, what are you thinking? Emanuel blamed Biden's advisors for being less than candid about his physical stamina and mental acuity, and blasted the president for reneging on a campaign pledge to step aside after a single term. Quote, he said he was going to run for one term. He's doing it to restore democracy. He then runs for a second term. That's the first bit of malarkey, as he would say. He and his cohorts have told us that he's been healthy for over a year, Emanuel continued. I had a father who died at 92, but at 81, I took away his keys, took away his car, and it was very simple test for me, he said to loud applause. If you were driving from downtown Beverly Hills to Malibu, would you want Biden to do it at night? Would you want Trump to do it at night? If the answer is neither, you cannot have them running a $27 trillion company called the United States. Brokered convention, no. Now there's some question whether the delegates can do something, so lawyers will have to look into this. So this is the beginning of the problem. Um, and this all comes back to, in my view, Joe Biden had a whole week to begin to staunch the bleeding from this debate. Anybody who was paying attention knew that this debate was a disaster. I think moments after. And we know from reporting that the president listens to Morning Joe, and Morning Joe that Friday basically divorced Joe Biden. Said he was a good man, but he needed to get out of the race. So anyone paying attention knew that this thing went south by Friday. And the Biden administration did not do what it needed to do. And I even said it on the last video I did, that the Biden administration needed to do a number of things. And they needed to show that the president was of sound mind and could prosecute the case against Donald Trump. And the only way to do it is not with rallies, is not with pre-taped town halls or something. He had to do one-on-one sit-down interviews. And I said I thought it needed to be with friendly media like Rachel Maddow, starting there, and then with 60 Minutes, and then progressively go up to like a Bill Maher or someone who's going to really take it to him. They did not do that. Instead, they came out with a bunch of different answers as to what happened, and then allowed this thing to just fester. So now you have donors breaking away. Now, in addition to donors, you've got Democrats now starting to call out. Slowly, Democrats are speaking out, some calling for Biden to step aside, and in some cases asking him to do a mental test. So let's look at who these folks are. And, this is when things get really, really troubling. It's one thing for donors to break away, but now you've got Democrats calling for this. So it begins with this gentleman, Lloyd Doggett. He's been around for a long time, from Texas. Texas U.S. Rep. Lloyd Doggett on Tuesday became the first congressional Democrat to say Biden should withdraw as the Democratic presidential nominee. Many top Biden supporters, such as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, expressed support for Biden, but other influential Democrats signaled doubts. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said during an interview on MSNBC that it's a legitimate question whether Biden is mentally fit for another 4 years. Ouch. And then you've got Arizona Rep. Raul Grijalva. This is from the New York Times. Representative Grijalva, of Arizona, has become the second House Democrat to call on President Biden to leave the race. Quote, if he's the candidate, I'm going to support him, but I think that this is an opportunity to look elsewhere. What he needs to do is shoulder the responsibility for keeping that seat, and part of that responsibility is to get out of this race. Grijalva is also the former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Then you've also got this guy, Colorado Democrat Adam Frisch. He is not currently a House member, but he's running. Adam Frisch came very close to beating the Colorado woman there, whose name I'm totally blanking on right now, Boebert. He came very close to beating Boebert last cycle, and Boebert left that district that he's a part of to go into another district, and she survives the Republican the Republican challenger. So she made a smart move to not go up against this guy again. But anyway, so Adam Frisch, the Colorado Democrat running for the 3rd congressional district seat, released a video Tuesday calling for Biden to step aside, and he elaborated on this position in an opinion piece published by the Washington Post. Then you've got this guy, Maine Rep. Jared Golden. And this is from the Bangor Daily News. While I don't plan to vote for him, Donald Trump is going to win, and I'm okay with that. Democrats' post-debate hand-wringing is based on the idea that a Trump victory is not just a political loss, but a unique threat to our democracy. I reject the premise. Unlike Biden and many others, I refuse to participate in a campaign to scare voters with the idea that Trump will end our democratic system. I put an asterisk at the end of that because I'm going to talk about this guy for a minute and what I see is going on here. So put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to that guy in my final comments. Then finally, the first person that was part of the White House administration, this is the former head of the photographer, Chandler West. He came out, I think, almost the next day in Axios. He says, quote, "I know many of these people and how the White House operates. They will say that he had a cold or just experienced a bad night, but for weeks and months in private, they have all said what we saw last night. Joe is not as strong as he was just a couple of years ago," West reportedly wrote. I think he wrote that, I think, in an Instagram post or somewhere. West told Axios that he wrote the post because, quote, "the debate was not the first bad day, and it's not going to be the last." So here begins the problem. And again, it's the fault of the campaign more so than Biden, because they did not attack this narrative early enough and comfort the base, the Democrats, early enough. He has now created an opening for people who are scared. I mean, that's the only way to look at it. You have people who they're hoping that they're down ballot and they're hoping that they will make it into Congress or that they'll keep their jobs. This guy from Maine, he's in a Trump district. He's a Democrat that won in a Trump district. And he is scared to death that he's going to lose his seat over Joe Biden. So this is part of what has happened and what will happen and what did happen, because the campaign has not done what it needed to do to staunch the bleeding from this debate. Then you got to go into the candidate himself. He keeps changing the reasons why things didn't work out on Thursday. Not last Thursday, but the Thursday before that during the debate. In a sign that things are not going well for the Biden campaign, they appear to be unable to settle on a narrative. They cannot settle on why things went so poorly for him. Do they even really know? Here's one thing that they said at first. The Wall Street Journal reported a source said that the president was suffering from a cold. That was the first thing that came out. Then, number two, ABC News reports at a campaign fundraiser, President Joe Biden, for the first time, attributed his poor performance last week to the amount of foreign travel he did in June. That's the excuse for number two. And then number three, the BBC reports President Joe Biden has blamed his poor debate performance last week on jet lag, telling reporters that he wasn't very smart for traveling around the world a couple of times before the debate. "I didn't listen to my staff, and then I nearly fell asleep on stage." What a damning admission that is. I don't know who is advising the president on what he should say, but the last thing I would have said is that I almost fell asleep on stage. I mean, the optics look bad and the messaging is absolutely terrible. So moving on, the polling. Now, I did a whole show last week, over the weekend, Saturday, and I talked about polling because polling had just pretty much come out from Data for Progress about the debate. And the polling looked like it wasn't that bad a night for Biden, given the performance. And Trump did not benefit at all. No poll saw Trump going astronomical, shooting up as people ran away from Biden and towards Trump. And things were looking like they were stable. But polling has now shifted since then. I mean, we're a week away from that debate. And I'm not a huge fan of polling, given the 2016 race was wrong and the red wave of 2022 was wrong and it was off by a lot. But it is an indicator of what should not be ignored. If Biden were up by a lot, in the polling, would we ignore it? Of course not. We would be talking about how great his polling is. Everyone would be talking about the great polling. So just because polling looks bad doesn't mean that we can ignore it. And I know a lot of people would like to. But I'm going to just look at it just as to give an idea of where people are and what is happening, how people are perceiving what has happened since the debate. So the polling has shifted away from President Biden. There's a CBS YouGov poll. And again, I got a lot of this stuff on Friday. I started doing this research. So if there's new polling out today, I have no idea. But this was from Newsweek. President Joe Biden has lost his polling lead in all U.S. battleground states, according to a new survey. According to a CBS YouGov poll, in 7 states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the Democrat is now behind his Republican challenger, Donald Trump, by 3 points in the key swing states, with 48% of the vote share to Trump's 51%. In June, Biden was 1 point ahead with 50% of the vote share to Trump's 49%, meaning that the president has seen a negative 4-point swing in just 1 month. The CBS YouGov poll of 2,826 registered voters was conducted between June 28th and July 2nd and had a margin of error of plus or minus 2.3 points. From CBS, it says that Trump now has a 3-point edge over President Biden across the battleground states collectively and a 2-point edge nationally. A big factor here is motivation, not just persuasion. Democrats are not as likely as Republicans to say they will definitely vote for him. Perhaps befitting a race with 2 well-known candidates and a heavily partisan electorate, over 90% of both Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump's supporters say they would never even consider the other candidate. Now you've got this very interesting thing that I think came out, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it. This is from The Hill. Former Obama advisor Dan Pfeiffer said, quote, "The poll that really shook Democrats in their boots came from Open Labs, a highly respected Democratic polling operation that works with campaigns and super PACs. The polling memo from Open Labs, leaked to Puck News, showed how President Biden's support was sliding. The Open Labs memo noted that, quote, largest single week drop in Biden's vote share since it began the horse race tracking in late 2021. The poll made the rounds among Democrats for a couple of days. I had 4 Democratic operatives share it with me on Tuesday. So this is, now we can see why the previous, as I said previously, that these other folks are starting to call for Biden to come out, because Open Labs has been sending this to Democrats to show how bad things have gotten. But this is the important part. Internal leaks of bad news is bad. While the internal polling is bad, what is worrying is that it was leaked. This is my assessment. The Biden campaign has been disciplined up until now with no leaks. This leaked poll could be a sign that some within the campaign and outside, but close to the campaign, are sabotaging the president's reelection efforts. Why? Are they losing faith in Biden? David Pfeiffer and his friends, all former Obama people, are hosts of Pod Save America and were the first to call for Biden's ouster. Why are Obama people against Biden? So this is the other, if you could put sort of nails in the coffin sort of thing, if I were counting that, this is another nail in the coffin. Now you're beginning to have people within the campaign leak internal polling and internal information to the press, to David Pfeiffer. Again, someone who knows these people and was part of Obama's campaign, but who decided to, on his own, put out this information to the world to let people know what the internal polling is saying to the Biden administration, right? Because let me also point out something here that folks may not know. There is a belief and I think it comes from both the behavior of Biden, particularly yesterday at the 101 interview, and reporting that Joe Biden and his team do not believe the polls, that they do not believe he's way off. Even Simon Rosenberg, who is Hopium, who I've encouraged people to take a look at, who are Biden supporters who want to get a different assessment of how things are going. Even he has said that he doesn't believe the polls. That's somewhat worrying because you have to begin to wonder, are people in the campaign dealing with reality of what's really going on here, of what's happening to the Biden campaign? So to do this internal leaking of the polls is, in one sense, letting people know that they're aware and they've been made aware of how bad things are. And their response is then what you want to take a look at and see how they're going to respond, because so far the response has been somewhat muted. Moving on. Biden has planned a 101 interview. Is it too late? So that happened yesterday. In my previous video, I called on Joe Biden, as I said earlier, to do 101 interviews immediately. Rachel Maddow show, 60 Minutes, Bill Maher. He needed to explain himself, apologize, hit Trump, and then talk about his plan for America, in my view. Instead, the campaign has done rallies, private events, and pre-recorded one-on-one interviews a week out from the debate that is reportedly 15 minutes long. This debate, I think, ended up being 25 or so minutes long. What's also fascinating is he's doing these private events, but the private events are leaking. So he might as well do public events. I mean, I don't even understand the point of a private event if what's discussed in the private event becomes public. But let's talk about this. Everything hangs on this interview. From the New York Times, Mr. Stephanopoulos' high-profile interview on Friday with Mr. Biden is set to be taped in the afternoon in Wisconsin and broadcast in its entirety at 8 p.m. Eastern. ABC has pledged to air the interview in full and without edits, meaning that any attempt by Biden's aide to cut off the conversation early would be captured by cameras and likely shown to viewers. The primetime special, quote, "One-on-One with President Biden," that's the title, has been previewed to affiliates as lasting 30 minutes, but it could be extended. Also from the New York Times, the President Biden has told key allies that he knows the coming days are crucial, and Mr. Biden has emphasized that he is deeply committed to fight for re-election, but understands that his viability as a candidate is on the line. Mr. Biden's allies said that his next few appearances heading into the July 4th holiday weekend must go well, particularly an interview with George Stephanopoulos scheduled to air Friday on ABC. So how did things go? This aired, and we had early reporting right out the gate. So from Variety, Biden's ABC interview was a necessary appointment with the public and a botched one. Within 30 seconds, Stephanopoulos was asking a follow-up questions. Listening to the set of facts, Biden allowed his face to go into an expression familiar from the debate. His eyes on camera looked into a distant unfamiliar. His mouth hung slackly open. Anyone who has been lucky enough to have relatives live into old age recognize this expression and recalls it with no small amount of pain too. That's Variety. That's just a snippet, but you can tell from the title that it did not go well for Variety. From Newsweek, they just focused on key moments from Joe Biden's first televised interview. The president was also asked if he would agree to undergo a cognitive test to quell concerns about whether he is mentally fit to serve another 4 years, something that the Trump and his supporters have called on for multiple occasions. Biden said, however, that, quote, "No one said I had to take a test," and that his physicians have said that he's good. When pressed further by Stephanopoulos, the president answered, "I have a cognitive test every single day. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world." From the Washington Post, Stephanopoulos praised for challenging, empathetic Biden interview. That's the title of that. Quote, "Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years. That's Stephanopoulos to the president. The president asserted that he did. Stephanopoulos noted his faltering polls, prompting Biden to challenge the numbers. Do you think poll data is as accurate as it used to be? And then from ABC News, the title is Biden dismisses concerns about mental fitness, says he'll drop out if the Lord Almighty told him. Quote, this is Stephanopoulos. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months? Joe Biden says, can I run 110 flat? No, but I'm still in good shape. Stephanopoulos followed up asking, are you more frail? Joe Biden says no, flatly. And then this is from Deadline. Biden dodges calls for cognitive test in Stephanopoulos interview. POTUS proclaims as more voices worry he can't beat Trump. And this is the snippet from that. Saying he did the best he could, Biden was also oddly cavalier, bordering on arrogant, when characterizing how he would feel and his responsibility if, quote, congenital liar, I don't even know what that word is, congenital liar, Trump got back into the White House in November, instituting his openly oppressive and retaliatory aims. Tonight, with a more energetic stance than usual, Biden still had a few instances of tapering off in his own stories and sentences. The president tripped up on one occasion that might come back to haunt him. Biden made an error when he was asked about Senator Mark Warner and his reported effort to mobilize other senators over the president getting out of the race. Biden said Mark is a good man. He also tried to get the nomination too. Senator Warner never ran for president. So I ask you, was that a good interview? Was that a good one-on-one? And I mean, today the reporting keeps going on how this interview didn't move the needle for most people. And then you have the question of, let's say that Biden comes to reality and decides to leave. Who would replace him? If Biden should step down, his replacement is key for several reasons, right? So let's go into that. The 13 keys. I've talked about Alan Lichtman before. Of the Alan Lichtman of the 13 keys told News Nation Joe Biden is the Democrats' best hope for victory in November. But if Biden does decide to end his reelection bid, he should resign the presidency for the good of the country. That would be a very popular move. He would release his delegates to Harris and make sure that she's the consensus nominee. Regarding campaign cash, that's an important factor on who would replace Joe Biden. They have to have access to that campaign money. And this is from NBC News. If President Joe Biden decides to step aside for the 2024 race, Vice President Kamala Harris, would be in line to get first dibs on the tens of millions of dollars in his campaign war chest. That appears to be correct according to some campaign finance experts, but likely only if she then became the Democrats' presidential nominee. Campaign finance laws also states that a campaign committee designated by a presidential candidate can be used by the party's vice presidential candidate. Then you have to think about the polling. Harris polls better than all others except for one. And this is from ABC. In a potential matchup between Harris and former President Donald Trump, Harris and Trump were nearly tied with 42% supporting her, 43% supporting the former president, according to an Ipsos poll released Tuesday. Ipsos poll had Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer trailing Trump 36-41 in 2024 race, while CNN poll had her 42 to Trump's 47. In Ipsos poll, Governor Gavin Newsom fared 39 to Trump's 42 and CNN 43 to Trump's 48. Ipsos showed that Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear's matchup would be 36-40 split. J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, 34% of voters would choose Pritzker if he were the ticket versus 40% for Trump. In the CNN poll, 43% of respondents picked Buttigieg compared to 47% for Trump. Ipsos did not float Buttigieg as a potential candidate in their poll. But there's one person that beats Donald Trump outright, and that is Michelle Obama. Ipsos poll The former First Lady appeared to strike a chord with some voters. The one woman who would outperform Harris and all others is Michelle Obama, led Trump 50 to 39. So, what am I trying to say here? Why am I bringing all this stuff up? First of all, I'm bringing it up because it's just evidence that I'm putting out there that there is a problem here. That, and you might say, oh, the president already knows there's a problem. Does he really? Because some of those answers in that debate don't seem to indicate that he does. I mean, again, he sort of is indignant on this idea that anybody should should come in and take over. He said, that he's basically saying that Mark Warner's desire to ask him to step out is basically because he wanted the nomination. It's not because he has a legitimate cause of action. He talks about, is he more frail? Stephanopoulos asked him. He says, no, I'm not more frail. Is that a person that is really dealing with reality, is really dealing with the situation at hand? So I've changed my mind. And, the question is, do I believe Harris for president? Is that what I'm saying? Is that where I'm going? I've changed my mind in the sense that I was pretty much 1,000% believing that Joe Biden should get out of this, should stay in the race and should fight, and that Democrats should rally behind him. I'm not as as sure about that as I was, and let me go over my thinking on this. Number one, there's something wrong, right? There appears to be something wrong with the campaign itself, and let me go into more detail as to what exactly I mean here. There appears to be something fundamentally wrong with the Biden campaign that was on full display during and then after the debate. Not only the fact that debate was on a date and a time of Biden's choosing, but also that Trump was clearly unprepared. Biden, who reportedly spent weeks preparing, was overprepared, and he appeared lost at the debate. But then after the debate, the campaign has shifted the narrative as to why Biden had such a poor performance. Then instead of doing sit-down interviews, he spent days doing rallies and private events. Biden even admits he almost fell asleep on stage. Then you've got the problem with Biden too old is set. And people are starting to begin to believe they were betrayed. The debate was supposed to change the narrative. Remember, Joe Biden was not at an equal, if you had like a starting line, Donald Trump was at the starting line. Biden was a few steps further back from the starting line before the debate. After debate, Trump may be just a little bit further beyond the starting line, but Joe Biden is further back from that starting line. You wanted to be, at the end of that debate, you wanted to be further ahead of the starting line, but Biden is further back. So we're beyond whether, he comes into debate, people thinking he's too old, to run. Now you have like Lichtman talking about he needs to step down from the presidency. He's so old. You're beginning to have that narrative that what is really going on in the White House. That's how bad this has gotten for Biden over this period of time. And the debates were supposed to change the narrative that had already been pervasive on the right and a little bit on the left. The base of the Democrats were willing to give Biden campaign the benefit of the doubt, expecting a State of the Union style performance. Instead, their fears were validated. Now, after the debate, the base feels betrayed and lied to. Comments by Disney and Emanuel say as much. Ari Emanuel says, we were told that he was going to do one term. He was going to do one 4-year term and he was going to step down. Now he's doing a second year. So that's a sign that he feels betrayed as one of the biggest donors on the Democratic side. Then you've got these leaks of polling data, and then statements from inside the campaign from a former photographer, as well as former Obama people. Pod Save America, David Axelrod has gone on shows, showed division and anger from all around Biden in the Democratic base. this guy, the photographer, was basically like, this isn't the first time. I mean, I remember, and if people remember the Trump years and all of the leaks that were coming out. 35th, the 25th Amendment or whatever it is, to remove Trump because he was mentally incapacitated. He was mentally it was a never-ending leaks coming out of the White House as to what was going on. That's what's happening here regarding this campaign to show you how bad things have gotten. And the base is already weak, right? Biden came into the debate with erosion from his base, as I already mentioned. Let's not forget, young people are moving away from Biden due to Palestinian-Israeli conflict. African Americans are not moving in a big way, but Biden cannot lose them at all. His numbers are down with blacks over the Middle East. Again, according to Axios, many Latinos are increasingly identifying as independent, and working class voters are leaning towards the GOP, if you can believe it, Latinos. And then, according to one poll, Biden has lost ground on every major religious group, but LDS, who have been resistant to Trump, have been trending away from Biden since 2021. A third of LDS approved of Biden in 2021. By 2023, it was 1 in 5. LDS, by the way, for those guys, Latter-day Saints, those are Mormons. Surprisingly, out of Utah, they were, of all of the religious groups, evangelicals and every one of them, Southern Baptists, they had moved towards Trump's. LDS were one of the few that were resistant, but now things are changing. They're not moving so much towards Trump, I don't think, but they are certainly moving away from Biden. And Kamala Harris for president, Kamala Harris coming in would change the game ultimately and fundamentally. It would be a game change. It would create opportunity not only for a reset, but also for a rebranding of the Biden legacy. A breath of fresh air and anticipation takes over from fear and concern. The focus on Harris' VP pick will energize the campaign. Harris is the first Asian, the first black, could cause African Americans, in particular black women and young people, to come back to the party. As a woman and a former prosecutor, she can go after Trump on Roe, the biggest tool in the Democratic arsenal. That is a case for Kamala Harris to take over. We already saw, as I indicated, that she polls better than every governor that people have come out with. So having that change, having Biden step out and having Kamala Harris step in, really does reset things for the Democratic Party. So let me give you my final thoughts on this. All is not lost, right? As many have said, even though Biden's debate performance was bad, like Titanic bad, Trump has not gained. In fact, many believe he may have lost potential voters because he has not moved up in a huge measurable way given Biden's performance. So if Biden remains, he could turn it around, but it will be hard. Biden would have to be on point 100% of the time. What happens at the next gaffe? Here's the other problem that we have, though. If Biden stays in a race with ABC News, what he says will not be as important as how he says it. We saw that already with the ABC News interview. Can we depend on Joe to counterpunch? What happens if he makes a gaffe? Could he do and say 1,000 good things and be undone by one gaffe? He will constantly be behind the 8 ball, not given the benefit of the doubt every time he makes a mistake, just like the Warner, as Deadline indicated. He made this one gaffe about Mark Warner having never run for president. Notice how they picked that out. Out of everything that the man said, they picked out the one gaffe that he made. I mean, Donald Trump makes gaffes all the time. I mean, he's saying all kind of crazy stuff. And everyone is pointing to this. Almost people have ignored what Donald Trump has said now. Expect deep fakes. I think this is the one thing that we haven't seen, or maybe I haven't because I'm not on social media, but expect deep fakes to come out. With Biden looking even more old and confused, that will continue the narrative that he's old and frail. And the concern is that this is a wound that will never heal. The problem with Plan B, by the way, Alan Lichtman, and I mentioned him earlier with respect to his idea of having the vice president, the president step down immediately and have the vice president become president. I don't agree with that. There's a big problem with that also, is that you can't get a vice president. It has to be a scenario where Kamala Harris succeeds Joe Biden due to Biden's death or incapacity. Biden would nominate a new VP, but the House and the Senate would need to confirm that VP, and we know the House would never do that. Trump gets a pass, and this is I believe the fault of the campaign, but also the fault of the media. They have now become fixated on Biden and Biden's frailties, and they're totally ignoring Donald Trump. And the longer Biden stays in the race, the more that's going to become a factor and continue to become a factor. We're not even hearing about Project 2024, 2025, which is an absolute nightmare. I think the press is starting to get on it because Donald Trump has messaged it on his message board. But I think it's extremely important to note that Donald Trump gets a pass. He said many crazy things. You know, no one, the press doesn't really even talk about it as much as they've been fixated on Biden. You have to remember what's important here is that we're building a anti-Trump coalition, not a pro-Biden one. Democrats are not building a pro-Biden or even a pro-Harris party, but an anti-Trump party. Removing the age issue forces the Trump campaign to change tactics. It also will force people to pay more attention to Trump to see how he pivots. That is good for an anti-Trump campaign. I don't believe he can pivot. With Trump, with Biden, we have stopped talking about Trump. We need to get back to talking about Trump. And if things shift and a black woman becomes his new opponent, as the media begins talking about Trump again, as he responds to a Harris candidate, you have to wonder whether he'll be remain disciplined. He won't, you know. He'll go overboard and say something stupid, sexist, or racist. He'll stumble. Will he look feeble against a younger, more dynamic female candidate? Kamala has her drawbacks. There's no question. The vice president has issues. She's famously had a disaster of a presidential campaign. Her first few years were also a mess, with former members of her team speaking anonymously about her and her crew. That's when when she first got into the White House as vice president. It was a total mess. I think that was widely reported. And she has been targeted by blacks in the past, and she's targeted blacks. During her run for president, many African Americans did not want to support her. So that's that. And I want to come back to this Jared Golden thing, because I this is something I try to talk to Democrats about, and something that I really need to want to get out there every time I get an opportunity, because I think this is a perfect opportunity, because we're seeing it right now. Look out for the moderates, Democratic moderates. Democratic moderates are some of the worst. And we need to keep an eye on moderate Democrats. And there are a few in the House and that are like Golden and have attacked Democrats. He famously and arrogantly joined with GOP to slash the salary of the first black Secretary of Defense to $1. Washington State Rep. Marie Guzcamp Perez also joined in that vote and says Biden will lose in November. Her district is +5, by the way, red Republican +5. Unlike Republicans, however, moderate Democrats have won elections of Democrats and flipped to becoming Republicans. Golden's statement all but endorses Trump. So I would not be surprised if it happened with Golden. His district voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. Jared Golden is not a solid Democrat. That statement that he made talking about Trump, not being afraid of Trump, I mean, that was an endorsement basically of Trump. I don't care if Trump is the nominee and is the president. Given all that we've learned, given all Project 2025, all of it, he doesn't care. He's refusing to get into the attacking of Trump. Have you ever seen that of a moderate Republican regarding Joe Biden, regarding the Democratic Party? Come on. And we know that, and we've seen it. West Virginia governor famously ran as a Democrat, became governor, and then became a Republican while in office. Democrats are not loyal people. And I would be keep your eye on this guy, Golden and Guzcamp Perez. These are people who are Democrats in red parts of the state, even if the state is blue or bluish or purple, whatever, they're still in the red parts. And these folks, we cheer when they win elections because that means the House or the Senate or whomever gets more of them in. However, Democrats are not loyal, and these moderate Democrats are absolutely not loyal. Keep an eye out for him. One final thought from a good man that I like a lot, Stuart Stevens. And I wanted to play this really to focus on something that he said to sort of let people know, I'm not 100% in the tank of get rid of Biden. His statement is important here. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit to see if I can get to where I want to get to in this video.
And Stuart, I just want to go to you. I've spent a lot of time. I hear these people going, "Oh, well, we've seen this for the past 2-3 years," and da da da. There are all these reports, and the media should have reported this. The media reported. Listen, Stuart, if I'd gone in and talked to the president, which I've done a lot, if I've gone in and talked to the president, and I saw anything like this, I'd tell people the next day. I tell the president this. I'm so sorry, Mr. President, but this isn't working. But as I've told viewers here many times, I sat with him 2-3 hours, had conversations with him late at night, had a conversation with him late at night this week. Never seen anything that gave me pause, which I guess, though, asks the bigger question, what happened last Thursday night, and what should the Democrats do about it?
Well, you make a really good point. Republicans meet with President Biden all the time. And if they were coming out of these meetings and they could credibly say, well, he seemed lost, he wasn't there, they would be saying it. But what happened? They thought the guy was going to be so good in the debate that they were pre-spinning that he was on drugs. So
right.
This just does all parse. Look, I think he had a very, very bad debate. I've been involved in a lot of debate preps that, once they start to go south, they go south. It was the wrong time to have a bad night. Okay, it's June. Now you move on. I don't want to get all reality-based here, but, the last time that a White House held on to the party without incumbency was 1988. No president has ever lost re-election with unemployment numbers like these, with an economy this strong. I think that if everybody just takes a deep breath here, and on the other side, you have a guy who is calling for the trial and conviction for treason, of which the penalty is murder, for the daughter of a former Republican vice president and former member of Congress. And everybody who's supporting Donald Trump is an accomplice to that. It is absolutely outrageous that Republicans are not out there defending Liz Cheney and calling out Donald Trump for this extraordinary accusation and call.
Right. And by the way,
all right. So that is the mic drop moment as far as I'm concerned. Stuart Stevens says it all right there. Listen, my final view and my final thought and my final statement is that Joe Biden has to do something very dramatic. He has to make moves. He has to turn this thing around. One interview is not going to do it. He has to do multiple interviews. He has got to ace it 100% every time, as I said earlier. And it's going to be a very hard lift. It's got to be very tough. However, he has to decide to walk out. We cannot push him out. He cannot be forced out. And Kamala Harris has to be ready. We cannot push out Kamala Harris. She has got to become the nominee. You don't do that. Marianne Williamson is talking about, she's calling for a brokered convention. She wants to be the nominee. You cannot have some ambition. And, as this thing snowballs, more people are going to start coming out of the woodwork who think that they can be president. They're going to see the opportunity, ambitious people, and some of them are going to actually have a good pedigree. And these folks, the Abigail Disneys, the Ari Emanuels, they're going to start threatening, as they already have, to support that person over the president if things don't change the way they want it to. So I think it's important to that Joe Biden has to get a hold of this thing. I don't think he has yet. I don't know if he's going to, but he's got to get a hold of this thing. He's got to improve this thing. He's got to wipe the floor with Donald Trump, and we've got to hope. We have to hope, because Donald Trump is the favorite right now. Donald Trump is going to win, I think, if we listen to just the pollings. But if Donald Trump begins to fall apart, which is a very good possibility, and Joe Biden remains steady, and there's a second debate, Donald Trump has called for more debates, and there's a second debate, and he continues to do interviews and gets stronger and keeps moving forward, we could make it out of this. But if things don't turn around very quickly in the next week or so, I would say wait to 2 weeks at the most, Kamala Harris has to be ready to take over the reins. Democrats need to be ready to support Kamala Harris with all of her problems. And Joe Biden has to come to reality and step out of the race. And not just step out of the race, but continue to campaign, continue to be president and do president things, but also get out there and support Kamala Harris 1,000%. It's the only way that I think it would work. Thank you for joining me on today's video, and you will see me on the next one. Have a great weekend, everyone. Hey there, fantastic viewers. Eric Darnley Small here, and I hope you're loving today's episode of What You Missed. You've reached the end of today's show, but don't worry, there's more show coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click the bell so that you'll be notified when more content is available. You can also help the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm find new viewers so that I can keep bringing you all this incredible content you enjoy. But wait, there are more ways to support the show. You can make a contribution through the show's PayPal, which goes a long way in helping produce even better content for you. And consider becoming a part of our growing community by joining our Mastodon site at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed for more engaging discussions and exclusive updates. And here's something you won't want to miss. Mark your calendars for our live show streaming on YouTube and stream.vtip.me Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your support means the world to me, and together we're making What You Missed the best it can be. Thanks for being a part of my journey.